You're listening to the Travis Makes Money podcast presented by GoHighLevel.com. For a free 30-day trial of the best all-in-one digital marketing software tool on the planet, just go to GoHighLevel.com/Travis. What's going on, money makers? Welcome back to the Travis Makes Money podcast, where it's our mission to help you make more money. If you're new to the show, we release brand new conversations with unconventional money makers every single day of the week. So if you haven't yet, please be sure to go subscribe or follow in whatever podcast app you like to listen to the most. While you're there, if you want to leave us a quick rating review, we will be eternally grateful, as it does help out the show tremendously. Today on the show, we're actually going to be talking about podcasting with my good friend, Jess Burgio. As a podcast mentor and business coach, Jess empowers creators to build authentic personal brands that resonate with their communities and establish real authority. Host of Unscripted, a top 1.5% podcast, she shares raw insights on business strategy, personal growth, and audience expansion, and specifically talking about podcasting. So this is, as you all know, something that is near and dear to my heart. So excited to get into the conversation. Jess, what's up? Welcome to the show.
I know, right? It's so good. It's like, who knew that we could be podcasters? I mean, this wasn't something we signed up for in high school. I wish it was. I mean, it's legendary what you can do now with content, and podcasting is such a powerful platform.
Yeah, to me, it's one of the most powerful. So let's go back in time before we jump into that and talk about how you made your first dollar ever, and then we'll get into what you do now.
Well, I think it's funny because I don't specifically remember the very first dollar. It was probably some sort of bet that my uncle put me up against because he used to pay us cousins to do certain things. I think he was kind of a seedy old man if I look back now, but he was always about pitting us to who would do what and who would get something. And so I remember it was $5 I actually made. He used to throw fives around back then. And so that was a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
And so I quickly learned if I was the quickest to jump on some crazy idea, I might just make that money. And that's helped me tremendously in the entrepreneurship world.
So he would just be like, whoever's the first to do this crazy thing gets $5.
Totally. I can't even remember what now because they used to make us do all kinds of wackadoodle shit. But yeah, he would literally throw $5 bills at us, I think for his pure entertainment. He was a smart man.
It's funny, actually, now that you say that, I remember making $20 one time, 10 or 20. It was when I was 9, it was like, oh my gosh, this is like birthday money right here. Like, I'll do whatever, you know what I mean? And we had an above ground pool, and it was the middle of the winter. And my mom or dad had pulled the little thermometer thing out of the pool, and it was 45 degrees or something. And they're like, if you jump in the pool, I'll give you $20. And I was like, bet, 100%, I'm doing that for sure. But he did not think that I was going to do it. But I think adults sometimes forget that kids don't have any context for what that actually means.
No.
45 degrees, who cares? It's $20.
So you were the first cold plunger before it was even the thing to do. You can claim that, Trav. You can claim that.
And I got paid for it. So yeah, not a bad gig.
I love it.
Okay, so now what do you do to make money, Jess?
Oh man, I help people start their podcast, which is really cool. I also still do hair and makeup. I get to travel for that, and a variety of other coaching services that have been birthed through my past experiences. And the fact that I actually share those experiences on my podcast allows people to see opportunities to work with me. And so I'm open to a variety of ways of making money, but many of them come through the form of coaching, really trading time for money for that hour or that segment of time people want with me to learn the things that they see value that I talk about on the show or that I share on social media.
So hair and makeup was what it was before podcasting then?
Yep. And I still found a way to kind of bring it back around at a high level with the clients I love and have really deep relationships with, because it still gives me a creative outlet to do the things that are really, fulfilling for me. That transaction of a client coming in and leaving with that thing. It's unlike a podcast episode where we don't know who's listening to our show. There's no immediate validation or ROI. Yeah. I realized quickly when I got into the online space, I still needed that for myself. And so I created it in a way that actually still provided a lot of financial income, support, and structure. And those clients are happy. They work around my schedule. It's a really beautiful kind of ecosystem I've been able to create.
What was your initial goal starting your podcast? Was it a money-making venture? Was it a side hustle thing? What was your initial thought?
Well, I realized quickly when I tried to pivot from just being known as a salon owner and hair and makeup artist into the online space of a sense of sharing content and information, it was really around the mindset of making six figures in the beauty industry, because that seemed to be kind of a ceiling cap. And when I say six figures, I mean the ultimate 100,000, not 999,000, right? I also learned a lot about the money mindset of my industry. And I felt it was something I needed to create impact around, I had to bring this conversation to life. And there was so much like kind of pain boiling up within me, realizing that I had capped myself in the 150 to 200 range. And I just could never get past that without trading more time for money. And so when I launched my first course, nobody bought it. And I was like, wait, I forgot to create visibility for myself. I forgot to position myself as an expert or somebody who knows what they're talking about. I have no receipts to show because my other business really was done in the behind the scenes, nothing online, nothing to document. So, when I realized that I had to create visibility, I was like, how can I do this that fits with my schedule, that aligns with what I already do, which is communicating at a high level with my clients. I love sharing stories. I love talking. I love getting the juice out of something. So I was like, a podcast aligns with who I already am. I know I can get better. I wasn't great when I started by any stretch, but I knew that it was an avenue that I could get passionate about. And what if it created a lot of opportunity for me to do all the things I think I want to do in the coaching space? And so that's kind of how everything happened. But truth be told, I'd wanted to start the show about 2 years earlier. Too scared, didn't know tech, didn't have the money, didn't have the time, all the normal excuses we have for not doing the things we want to do. And I had just opened my salon, and 6 months later, COVID happened. So all of a sudden I had a beautiful space. I had nothing but time and a little bit of money. And I had a new client who was a videographer. And we sat around and chatted. And he said, let's start your show. And so I knew right then and there I didn't want to be a statistic. I had learned that, most people fail after 20 episodes or quit. I won't say fail. And I was like, cool, well, let's record 25 episodes live before I launch the show to make sure I'm not a statistic because, I always like to prove them, whoever they are, wrong. And so that's how the show got started. And I had no real clear intention behind anything other than creating a place for me to connect with people on a deeper level other than in my salon.
And then you put out a couple episodes, blew up overnight, and the rest is history, right?
Yep, that's it. That's my exact story. So just follow that framework and you too will win. No, I wish, right? But as we know, podcasting, like entrepreneurship, generally is a long game. And I knew that. I knew that there was no end, and I didn't have to have full clarity. I just had to start because I was never going to get to episode 10, 20, 30 without starting. And I was never going to get to 100 downloads or 1,000 or 10,000 if I didn't keep going. And so what started as an idea to just create conversation around the pain point we were going through as an industry, which was to bring conversation around how other people in the industry were handling being shut down, pushed me enough to be like, I can talk about that. I want to talk about that. And then, of course, 10 minutes into the conversation, I started asking deeper questions like, how'd you get in the industry? How'd you become successful? Why are you still in the game? What else do you do? And so that kind of transformed as I put the reps in. And yeah, it's opened up so many other opportunities because I've created a place for people to get to know and trust me, and some of them like me. They don't all have to like me, but I'm either for them or I'm not. So I realized that as I became more of myself through the show, that people would really resonate with that energy or they wouldn't. And that's a good thing in the online space. You want to attract the right people and kind of repel the people who aren't meant for you.
What's been the most surprising benefit of having the show?
Oh my God, networking, obviously, getting to meet people where they intro you on their podcast as their good friend when really we met in Jeff Fenster's green room a couple of years ago on a random, I don't know, Tuesday or whatever day that was. And I think building relationship capital and networking with people who are running at a similar pace or doing things that you're doing and staying kind of in their world, it redefines like friendships as adults, right? Because we need all those people in our life, and to put the skin in the game, giving someone a platform to come share their gifts and vice versa, really it's a very reciprocal kind of relationship that feels good because I can help you, you can help me, and then we all win. And
Right.
so I think seeing that through the lens of what could be in business versus 25 years ago, nobody was sharing formulas of hair on. So like you didn't give that shit away. You did not tell the salon down the street what you were doing. It was like, my shit's mine. Don't steal my clients. There's not enough to go around. It was a totally different energy. And so now redefining all of that has just exploded the business in a variety of different ways. I'm definitely not the most downloaded show. I definitely don't make the most money in the online space, but I found an avenue that allows me to fully be myself. And that has brought in opportunities and made friendships and connections that I would have never otherwise had if I hadn't started the show.
What I love about podcasting as it relates to its ability to make money is that it can start off as a side hustle and it can fulfill your desire to have that like quote unquote passion pursuit.
Yeah.
So like if you're dead broke, starting a podcast is not the best idea for making money by the end of the month type of a thing. Unless you do like the guest monetization side of it, which we've helped people with in the past. But even then, it's still not 100% the best way to do it. However, if you are working a job or have a business that you don't hate, maybe you don't thoroughly enjoy it, maybe it's not like your quote unquote passion, it's not your passion to do roofing or whatever, or not your passion to do hair or something like that. But it pays the bills and you're pretty happy with it and it's okay. A podcast can be a really great side hustle because it can help you scratch the itch of whatever passion it is that you have, whether it's golf or television or movies or business, whatever niche or category you want to pursue. It can help you kind of scratch that itch. And then it can potentially at some point turn into decent side money. And then if you stick with it long enough, it could actually replace your full-time income. And then if you stick with it past that, it could actually pay you a lot of money to talk about the thing that you're most passionate about. So I really like the potential of podcasting when it comes to making more money as it relates to like long-term putting you into a position that enables you to monetize the thing that you really want to be doing with your time. But it's going to be a long haul. And so you have to kind of focus on some of the other key benefits that you get along the way, which is why I asked that question. And I love that you answered with the network piece, because especially for people who are kind of like, I know I want to do something big, but I don't know exactly what that is. And I don't know exactly where I'm going to start with that. Podcast is also a fantastic discovery tool, right? Like when you're having conversations with people who you would not have had a conversation with otherwise, you're able to get a full glimpse into another world that exists that you had no idea existed. Like today on the show, I've talked to a guy who makes money running a dance company in Colombia. I'm talking to you as a podcaster. I talked to somebody who helps best-selling authors sell more books. Like it's glimpses into all of these different worlds that exist. And most of the time, the reason we can't pursue the things that we want is because we don't even know that it's an option. We don't even know that people are already doing it. I mean, sometimes you can have these conversations and be like, wow, I didn't even know that this was potentially available to me.
Yeah.
On the branding side, though, what have you noticed that it's helped you do, assuming 0 people listen to the show?
Well, it positions me as an expert just by having a show that looks well oiled from the outside. So, say no one even downloads it, I'm just sharing content maybe on social media or other platforms. When you are putting skin in the game and people see you showing up, it creates a brand and you can
Right.
write the narrative of that brand however you're positioning yourself. And so the podcast is really a brand accelerator in my mind for people if they really want to deep dive into creating a personal brand. That's when I strongly encourage starting a podcast. If you want to be known as a personal brand, it's the most powerful tool. If you want to be known as an expert in your field, you can be that roofer or plumber that you were referencing and talk about the ways in which like you could grow your company or scale your company or why you got into that unsexy business, but it creates a very lucrative life and glamorous, life for your family because you make $300,000, $400,000, changing out toilets. I don't know, anything's possible. And you can create conversation around it if you're excited about it. And so with the personal branding side, I have a lot of coaching clients that don't necessarily have a business yet, like you were saying. They maybe want to start a side hustle. And so they're curious, is a podcast where they should be going? Should they put the time and effort into it? How do they make money? That's always the top question. How do you monetize a podcast? So, of course, my first question is always like, do you sell anything?
Yeah.
It's your easiest platform to share the things you love. So, you never have to create anything if you don't want. If you are obsessed with, I'm holding up glasses, this brand of glasses, you could talk incessantly about them. You can run ads on your podcast that you don't even get paid for yet in order to potentially create brand collaborations. I always say if there's a company you want to work for and you don't think they're going to hire you right away or throw money at your brand new podcast, run ads for free. Talk about them. Leverage what you do have. If it's a small social media, start creating stories for them. I mean, that's the biggest way to start to get people to notice you. And it's helped the brand because there were companies that I loved that I wouldn't even have asked to be sponsored until I started to make 30-second ads for them on my show. And then, of course, sponsorships came afterwards.
Yeah. And there's a couple of things you touched on there. The content piece is one of them, because if you're interested in building a personal brand, regardless of what industry you're in, content is a part of it. You can't get away from creating content. That's kind of the bedrock of a strong personal brand, is people need to be able to hear from you and hear your thoughts and opinions on things. And it's going to push some people away inevitably, but it's also going to draw some people in inevitably. So the problem is, if you're not a full-time creator, if you're not used to jumping on a microphone, talking to a camera and things like that, and you're going back to our early examples, a plumber or something like that, it can feel awkward to just like turn on your camera and be like, here's 3 tips for unclogging your toilet or whatever. You know what I mean? Like you don't have the insight into how the algorithms work or how to structure a piece of content. And that's one big piece of having a podcast, is that for a lot of the clients we've helped over the years, it was like, this is now your full content calendar. Is you don't have to do anything other than record the podcast. You take 3 to 4 hours, one day a month, to record 4 episodes for that month. And then from those 4 hours, you can pull all of your entire social media content calendar just from that. And if you don't have a massive team that's going to be producing all this for you, the good news is there's a ton of AI tools now. You can take the episode, you can plug it into a chat GPT, it'll write a blog post for you. It'll write several blog posts for you. It will write 20 tweets for you. You can throw the link into Opus, and Opus will generate 15 social media clips in 20 minutes from your 30-minute podcast episode that you can post and distribute across social platforms. So if you're somebody who's like, I know I got to create content, I have no idea what to talk about, starting a podcast can be a really great way to do it, because you can just hop on, have a conversation with somebody like you who's good at the thing that it is that you do, who you would have a natural free-flowing conversation with, and then that can fill your entire content calendar. The second thing that you mentioned there was the product piece. I've now gotten to the point, Jess, where it's like, if I see like an ad for something online that I have an interest in, I'll just shoot them a message and say like, hey, are you interested in sponsoring podcasts? And most of the time it's a no. So some brands just don't sponsor podcasts. They're more interested in like social media influencer campaigns, which I shy away from. Mostly I'm more looking for podcast sponsors that I can just kind of like backfill social media stuff with. But I do get a ton of free product that they just like, if it's a product that I'm interested in, I'll just reach out, ask them about sponsorships. They're like, oh, we're not sponsoring right now, but we'll send you some free stuff. And, give us a shout out if you like it. It's like, okay, cool. It's still saved me hundreds of dollars on purchases I was probably going to make anyway, but they were just like, yeah, here's a bunch of free stuff. I'm still going through, like one of my favorite electrolyte mix that I drink every day is called Element or Element. I don't know exactly how they say it, but it's a great electrolyte mix. That was one of those companies. I think I bought like one order of them one time. And then since then, I've just been running on free stuff that they continue to send me, because I just talk about it naturally, because I talk about hydration, I talk about being healthy, and I talk about electrolytes, and it's part of what I do daily. So they're willing to just send me some free stuff. You know what I mean? So it's not always a direct path to how do I monetize this thing. It's also just kind of getting creative. And then, like you said, if they eventually like start seeing an uptick and being like, oh, for some reason we keep getting people mentioning this show when they reach out or whatever, it's like, well, maybe that will lead to a sponsorship deal later on down the road. But right now it's not really something that concerns me,
Yeah, I mean, there's strategic ways, if you do really want to work with a brand, would be to continuously plug that brand, even on social media, share it, talk about it while you're doing the podcast, show that on social media. I mean, everyone has some sort of following. Even if you only have a couple hundred followers on social, you can still drive traffic. I would, at bare minimum, at least, like, my advice to even you would be to go ask for a link that's trackable and clickable for you to put in your show notes, that every once in a while you mention is there, so that they can actually see some feedback if people are clicking that link. And at bare minimum, give you 10% off for your listeners. So even if you're not literally making money off of it, you're still providing value for your listeners, which everybody wants to save a few bucks. And ultimately, if you drive enough traffic, yeah, they will circle back and be like, hey, we actually want to be your only brand sponsor for the show. And so there's ways that you can strategically position companies that are open to doing that. But, right now it's kind of like anything goes. And if you have anything to leverage on social media, you might shy away from it, but somebody else might feel more comfortable saying, hey, I can leverage a hard post each week on your product. I can actually do 2 stories. I can do a variety of different things. Would you then be interested in sponsoring me for $500 an episode, whatever that might look like, also getting tagged on the podcast? So I feel like there's a lot of people who have really big followers who have no audience on a podcast that are like able to secure really big brands that way, and vice versa. you can be a brand new podcaster with no following, but if you have enough passion and energy behind something and you talk to a brand enough times, they'll come through with something. Yes, it'll be a free product and then some. So it's like a be prepared for the no's, but be prepared to also follow up 15 times if you're hungry.
What are your thoughts on guest shows versus solo shows? Like when you're coaching people, are you pushing people to do guests and interviews?
I think people should innately do whatever they feel comfortable with. I actually had a conversation with somebody the other day who's using our podcast management services, and I just assumed that he was going to do solo episodes as well. He's in the real estate space. I thought he'd want to share his genius. And he was like, "Oh, no, I'm not interested in doing any solos." He's like, "I strictly am doing this podcast for the networking ability to connect deeper with these people I want to have on the show."
Yeah.
So everyone has a different motive and why. I don't even think he's looking to make money off the show. It's really for him to connect deeper with these people. Then I talked to somebody else who I thought would want to have guests on her show, and she was all about being solo. So I think truly, if you know you're the cadence you want to run, you should do that first. But the way to grow and how I talked about networking and growing your relationship capital earlier, I love doing both. I love doing a mix. I love to do one solo a week and one guest episode. That's my goal usually. Right now we're doing mostly solos because I'm in launch mode for my podcast course. So it's like different seasons can ebb and flow. But I've made some of my closest friends and the best connections because I had guests on the show. So I think it's really important. It all depends. Like, Craig Siegel, he's grown his podcast to be, a top 0.5% podcast by having really big names on his show and leveraging that as proof and social media content, to grow his brand. He's known as the guy who can pretty much get anybody on his show too. So everyone has a different why for having their podcast. I think instead of copying what someone else is doing and doing something just because you think you should really figure out, what your mission is with the show, what kind of impact you're trying to create, and what you ultimately need and want out of it, because it should be a two-way thing. If you don't enjoy doing it and you're not getting what you need out of the show, you're not going to keep doing it. It's not going to feel aligned.
But Jess, isn't it too late to launch a podcast? Isn't it too saturated?
Yes, you should have started yesterday, but if you didn't start yesterday, today's a good time to start too. I mean, I look back even on my journey from 5 years ago, and even then, I wish I would have started 2 years earlier. And I talked about that on my stories the other day, because everyone feels like they're too late to everything. But so many people are midlife pivoting right now and want opportunities. And I'm like, a podcast can give you opportunities, like you said earlier, that you don't even know exist because you haven't had those conversations with somebody who lives on the other side of the country about how they're running a dance studio. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how masterminds were for me. I was in my hair bubble for 15 years before I joined a business mastermind where I felt like I didn't belong. Couldn't contribute. What do I know? I had that weird mentality of like, hopefully I get something out of this, but like, what do I bring to the table? And I quickly realized all the skill sets I had in that room were just different. And so the more you put yourself around people who are just in that growth mindset, entrepreneurship mindset, you will learn something, you will grow, and like everybody will collectively kind of move up. And you find your people through having, I think, conversations on podcasts. You either vibe with somebody or you don't. And
Right.
so, every once in a while I'll record an episode and I'm like, yep, that's not going to get out into the world. It wasn't a vibe.
Yeah.
And so I'm really in integrity with the content I create too. And I really try to, make every episode not just inspiring, but impactful on some level.
Yeah. It's so funny when I get the saturation comment from people because I'm just like, what? Why is this the only one where people think about, isn't it too saturated to do this? It's like, what? Sure. Literally everything is. Like, what are you talking about? Like, there's 2 billion Instagram users. Are you on Instagram? Yeah, I'm on Instagram. Well, why? Isn't it too saturated to be on Instagram? You know what I mean? Do you have a blog? Yeah, we have a blog. Well, isn't it too saturated? There's 500 million blogs out there. You know what I mean? Like, nobody asks about that with a book, but there's millions of books that come out every year. Every single year, there's millions of books that come out. You know what I mean? Like, what do you mean? Is it too saturated? Of course, like, do shows exist? Yes, but that doesn't mean that you can't have a good show. And of all of the platforms, podcasting is still the least competitive of all of them by a landslide. It's not even close. There's only 4.5 million total podcasts in existence. Only 10% of those actively released an episode in the last, I think it's 90 days. I could be wrong on that. It might be 30 days.
That's wild.
But so we're still less than 500,000 total actively releasing podcasts, which is the least saturated platform of all of them.
And let's be honest, talk radio has been around since we were little kids. That's all my mom used to listen to in the car long before it was called a podcast. It was live talk radio. Then there was the DJ chats. I mean, people have been having conversations for your entire life. And so if you think because we're calling it something different now, it's different, it's not. Nobody's reinvented the wheel. It's a conversation that somebody else wants to listen to. It's reality TV packaged in a different way. It's real hard conversations that would be on, 60 Minutes. I mean, it's the same thing that's been going on for years and years. It's just like how people want to call, cold plunging something different. You jumped into cold pool years ago. People have been going in cold water for it's like everybody wants to reinvent the thing. It's like in the hair industry, it's the wolf cut, or they want to call it this weird red. I'm like, why? Okay, great, great. It's the same haircut I've been doing for 50 years. It's like this, they've done that since the 70s. My kid's wearing the same Vans I wore when I was in junior high. The other day he wanted soft pants. I said, bro, what are soft pants? He's like, I don't know. They're at the store. We went and got them. They were corduroys. I'm like, I wore the exact outfit you wore 30 years ago. So it's like, it's not oversaturated. People are going to fall off. There's going to be room for the next guy. And, there's enough room for everybody in this space. And my show is like proof because it's called Unscripted. There's probably 50 other podcasts with that word in the title, but that didn't stop me from aligning with something that felt purposeful to me. I want to feel unscripted. I want people to feel unscripted when they're on the show. And I'm the only me that can do that. So it's like when you quiet the noise, how many hairdressers are there? How many freaking coffee shops are there? You know what I mean? Like nobody says that about being a doctor or a lawyer. And there's plenty of those.
Yeah, I remember talking to Tom Bilyeu on the show a few years back, and I asked him that question about Quest because they started a protein bar company, an insanely saturated field, hyper competitive. And he said, there's always room for the best. And I've always taken that with me. It's like there's always room for the best. Doesn't matter how saturated something is. If you do something really, really well and provide a really high quality service, product, piece of content, information, whatever it is, there's always room for you to succeed in that area if you just get in, buckle down, and commit to the long-term growth and success of whatever that venture is, including a podcast.
Yeah, I love that you just brought Quest up because I actually know Shannon, the originator of Quest, who made that bar in her kitchen. She and her husband have created a second company very similar to Quest called Legendary Foods. They were actually a sponsor of my podcast and still send me free product. The fact that they sold their company and then moved on to create something very, very similar in a slightly different way just goes to show you that there is plenty of room to do really great things. And so if you view your best in comparison to somebody else, you're never going to catch up with somebody else. That's like my friends who have started podcasts long before me. I'm never going to have as many episodes as her unless she quits. And then I can catch up. So when you stop the comparison game and you just get in the game, then you will win. That's what I just tell myself. I'm like, stop looking at what everyone else is doing. Focus on what you can control. Pump out your content. Promote your shit. Be really good at what you're doing. And that's it. You know what I mean? It's not that complicated. But as humans, we love to overcomplicate and ask the obvious questions like, is it too saturated? I mean, like, come on.
Yeah, it's a matter too, which is why I liked the beginning of this conversation, which is what are the other things that you get by being a podcaster? By doing this activity, what are some of the other benefits that you're maybe not thinking about? And look at the long-term benefits as the cherry on top.
Yeah.
If you happen to gain a massive audience, you happen to gain 6 figures in sponsorships, great. That's awesome. But that's the cherry on top. Let's focus on all the other things that this is going to do for you. It's going to help you fill up your entire social media calendar full of content. Great. That's one thing. It's going to help you build better knowledge and expertise in your area because you get to literally have one-on-one coaching calls with super smart people on an interview whenever you want. It's going to, sharpen your expertise in that field. For me, it forced me to constantly be consuming information around my topic because I didn't want to sound like a dumbass on these interviews. So like it forced me to continue reading more books, listening to more audiobooks, listening to more podcasts, staying on top of the most recent research and events in my space. It was my accountability partner to make myself a better person because I was doing it publicly, regardless if it was 50 people listening or 5,000 people listening. It didn't matter. It was just, I want to provide the best content possible and not be embarrassed because I didn't know this glaringly obvious thing about the thing that I supposedly am an expert in. So it helped me be better at what I do for a living. And then the network piece was easily the number one thing that I've taken away from it. The people that I've been able to have conversations with, like if I'm focusing on all these other areas that will inevitably come from having the show, it makes it much easier for me just to to stomach the hard work that is required in the meantime. And then eventually, like I said, at some point, maybe it does start paying you some money. Maybe it does start bringing you some sponsorship deals. Maybe it does bring you some clients for your business. Great. Now you can actually track the ROI in a measurable manner. But until then, there's a lot of other things that you can focus on that will keep you in the game until you experience some of those like cherry on top results later on.
Yeah, I mean, just off the cuff, like 70,000 last year from my podcast specifically in regards to mentioning my offers.
Mm.
And so when we talk about monetization, it's like the ease of which I was able to bring those clients in is insane. Like I
Yeah.
sold out a mastermind without any landing page.
Right.
It's like there was no launch strategy in there because the launch strategy was be consistent, show up on your podcast, give people value. One of the girls who bought into the program was like, I've been listening to your show for 8 months. I had one conversation with one random person that she resonated with, and in that conversation mentioned the mastermind, and she joined. So it's like somebody who had never purchased from me dropped $6,500 to work with me on a whim because they had invested so much time listening to the show. I had another woman on a coaching call today reflect back, hearing me speak with Chris Harder on a Zoom call during COVID and watching my journey transitioning from being a hairdresser. And I've taken people and documented it through the podcast that today she booked a call curious about how she can do the same thing. And so she'll be a potential client for the next probably 3 or 4 years once she develops what she needs to. So it's like the ROI comes in so many different ways. And I know you love talking about different ways to make money on the show. It's like you don't know what you don't know. And this platform can open up so many ways for you to bring in money, because COVID showed me that I can't depend on one specific way to make money. The thing that had always worked was taken away. And so that pain point pushed me to be like, what else is possible? And so when you give yourself that flexibility and freedom to make money however you choose, I mean, that's the real freedom people are seeking in entrepreneurship, I believe.
100%. Jess, thanks so much for coming on the show and be willing to do this. Where can people go to get more from you?
Yeah, I have a podcast called Unscripted, the podcast. We're on Instagram with its own page. It's at Jessica Burgio on Instagram for my personal antics and rants and raves every day. I love voice messages. So if you want to leave me a 5-minute voice note, I will listen to it.
At Jessica Burgio over on Instagram. That's Burgio at Jessica Burgio. Go check out some of the stuff that Jessica's putting out. Jess, thanks so much for doing this. If you're listening on a podcast app, go search Unscripted and give her some love over on the podcast. Podcasters love language, guys. I'm telling you, just rate and review the show and send her an email and say thanks for taking all the time and effort and energy that you put into making this show happen. It really does mean a lot to us. So Jess, thanks so much for doing this. Everybody else listening, remember, money only solves your money problems, but it's a little bit easier to solve the rest of your problems with some money in the bank. So let's solve that problem first here on the Travis Makes Money podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you next time. Peace out.